So what are exceptions? Exceptions are a common way of error handling. I think you've seen them in Java as well. JavaScript has it. So hopefully it should not be too hard for you to understand what things are. Anyway, so the idea of exceptions is that you basically have a way of returning an error state out of bounds. So in particular thing like, for example, if we have that age function, what happens if someone writes out the name 21 in text? Well, the int function can't handle that. The int function will say, okay, I can't handle this. You have to do it in a different way. So instead, what the int function does here is it will actually throw an exception. So in this case, it would be a value error. So how do you handle these exceptions then? So these exceptions are going to be thrown around, and they are basically, so you handle them by wrapping the code that may throw an exception into a try except block. So instead of just trying to ignore it, you can, and then your whole program crashes. We don't want that. We want to handle the error in a good way. And what we want to do is to basically, what happens is, in this case, for this particular example, we have a try keyword, we get the input, and then we divide that. And if you input a shoe size of size 0, this will throw an exception because we can't do division by 0. The except case works that way. So that's basically how exceptions work. So your code will continue at the except block, and then after the try except block, you can continue executing your code. What happens if you have multiple handlers or multiple exceptions you might want to handle? Because we also still had that value error. So in this particular case, the except value error says print, okay, sorry, you have to enter numbers. So you can handle different errors. You need to know what the type is, and the best way of figuring that out is by going to the documentation of the functions that you're using, and that documentation will tell you what the types of errors are that are available. So in some cases, you might also want to do something, okay, if there's no exception, or anyway at the end. So the else keyword allows you to do things that if there's no exception, and finally basically executes code at the end when there is no need. So yeah, so print in Python 3 is a function. In Python 2 it wasn't. So yes, it changed. So if there's some code example that had no parentheses, then that was wrong for Python 3. I will have a look later on the slides, and if there's an error, I'll fix that. There's also there's sloppy indentation here as well. It will work, but it's sloppy. Probably part of the reformatting of the code. Anyway, so how do you handle exceptions in a good way? Because again, coding is about not only doing something, but doing the right thing and doing it in the right way. So you do not want to just say, okay, I'm going to swallow the exceptions. Instead, what you want to do is handle the exception if that is an appropriate way. So when you're reading numbers and you get an exception that there's a value error, you say, okay, I didn't get a value, so you might assign it like -1 or something like that, and then okay, we loop again because it's not in the range. Or you give a different error message and you have a boolean where you want to do this. So we skip over, so sometimes you also can get things like if it's not correct data, you can redo it again, etc. But if you can't, so if you can't handle an exception, what you need to do is you re-raise it or you propagate the error, and not just swallow it and say, okay, yeah, I'll pretend nothing happens. That is a very good way of getting code that is unstable. So, for example, so one of the things you can think about here is like this particular loop. Does this actually finish? If we, that depends on whether or not this desk banging before dog picture happens. Yes. As a little bit of context, Gail had lots of dog pictures in the slide sets. I'm not that way inclined, so there's no dog pictures in my slides.